There's something that happens deep within us when we try to make sense of pain, especially the kind of pain that's personal, targeted, deliberate. Our minds reach for explanations. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe they were going through something. Maybe if I had just been different, they wouldn't have done it. And we wrap those maybes around our wounds like bandages, hoping they'll stop the bleeding. But they don't, because bandaging a lie doesn't stop the truth from leaking out. Here's the truth we don't like to say out loud. Some people hurt you on purpose. They didn't trip and fall into your heart and accidentally wreck it. They saw your light, your vulnerability, your trust, and chose to exploit it. They studied your softness not to protect it, but to weaponize it. And that's not something you heal from by calling it a misunderstanding. That's something you confront by calling it what it is, intentional damage. Now I get it. That sounds harsh. It's much more comfortable to believe people didn't know better, that their betrayal or cruelty came from ignorance, not design. Because if they didn't mean to hurt us, then we don't have to carry the weight of that betrayal. But let me tell you something. When you deny the truth of what happened, you don't escape the weight. You just carry it silently in your body, in your relationships, in your self-worth. There's a kind of psychological torment that comes from constantly justifying someone else's mistreatment. We gaslight ourselves better than they ever could. We say things like, they had a rough childhood, or they were under a lot of stress, as if pain gives someone the right to hand out pain like it's currency. But unhealed does not mean unaccountable. Yes, people are wounded. Yes, people are broken. But you can't let someone's history become your excuse for staying in a cycle of harm. See, when someone damages you intentionally, what they're doing is more than just causing harm. They're violating your dignity. They're saying, your well-being is worth less than my control. That's a power move. That's manipulation. And the longer you pretend it was an accident, the longer they keep the power. This isn't about holding on to bitterness. It's about reclaiming clarity. When you finally accept that what happened to you was not just unfortunate, but deliberate, something powerful shifts. You stop over-explaining your reaction. You stop shrinking to make them look bigger. You stop treating your intuition like it's paranoid when it's actually just perceptive. Intentional damage is not just about what they did. It's about what they knew they were doing. And the knowledge of that truth becomes your foundation for healing. Because now, you're no longer healing from a myth. You're healing from a fact. And facts are stable. Facts can be faced, lies. Even the comforting ones will always collapse. Let me say this clearly, acknowledging that they damaged you on purpose does not make you weak. It makes you wise. There's a strength in facing the darkness of another person's actions without romanticizing it, without sugarcoating it. That clarity, that's your starting point. That's your permission to stop bending yourself into forgiveness before you've even finished bleeding. And no, you don't have to hate them. You don't have to curse their name. You don't even have to confront them. But what you do need to do is confront the story you've been telling yourself. The one where it was somehow your fault or your softness invited the storm. That story ends today because you deserve a life that's built on truth. And the truth is this: they knew. They knew and they did it anyway. And that's not a reflection of your worth. That's a revelation of their character. So let this truth break something open in you. Not to destroy you, but to free you. To remind you that your clarity is sacred, your boundaries are righteous, and your healing begins the moment you stop explaining away what they meant to do. You cannot fully heal from what you're still pretending didn't happen. Once you face the truth that they did, in fact, damage you on purpose, you're left with a new question: now what? Because acknowledging that pain was intentional doesn't erase it. It doesn't rewind the clock or break the trust. You're still standing in the wreckage. The wound is still there. And let me tell you something that may sound strange. At first, the damage is real. It's not all in your head. You didn't make too much of it. You're not being dramatic. One of the cruelest things people do after they break something in you is pretend they didn't. But your pain isn't up for debate. Your nervous system remembers. Your trust issues remember. Your silence in places you used to speak boldly, that remembers too. But here's the part that shifts everything. The damage is real, but it doesn't define you. See, pain has a way of trying to build a permanent home inside of you. Trauma wants to convince you that the most broken part of your story is the most true part of who you are. But you are more than what was done to you. You are not the abuse. You are not the betrayal. You are not the version of yourself that was shaped by survival mode. Yes, that version mattered. She kept you breathing. But she is not the whole story. Sometimes we confuse our coping mechanisms with our identity. We say, I don't trust anyone, or I push people away, as if those things are part of our DNA. No, those are responses. Those are adaptations, and they made sense when you were under attack. But now, you don't owe permanent space in your life to temporary defenses. The damage may have shaped how you move through the world, but it doesn't get to dictate where you're going. You are not a broken thing to be pitied. You are a whole soul in the process of becoming. There is a version of you that exists on the other side of the damage, and she's not afraid. She's not numb. She's not overcompensating to prove she's okay. She is grounded, healed, and unbothered by the chaos that once had the power to define her. But you can't meet that version of yourself until you stop identifying with the injury. You've got to stop building your personality around the pain. Stop calling it your age when it's actually your armor. Because what protected you then may be poisoning you now. That sarcasm you use to hide vulnerability. That withdrawal you call being independent. That tendency to sabotage relationships before they get too close. That's not you. That's your pain trying to stay in control. And here's the hard truth. Healing means letting go of who you had to become in order to survive. It means grieving the version of you that was always on guard, always performing, always waiting for the next hit. It means choosing peace even when chaos is what you know best. Don't confuse the imprint of pain with the imprint of your identity. You are not the rejection. You are not the silence. You are not the failure someone tried to convince you you'd always be. You are not damaged goods. You are evolving grace. The people who hurt you may never acknowledge the damage they caused, but you don't need their validation to start healing. You get to say, yes, it broke me, but I'm still standing, and I won't organize my life around that brokenness anymore. You get to build again, not in spite of what happened, but informed by it, wiser, softer, stronger. You get to reclaim your name, your voice, your presence, and wear them without apology. Let me be clear, this is not about pretending you're okay. This is about choosing not to make your pain your personality. This is about deciding that what happened to you will inform your strength, not dictate your story. The damage is real, but it's not the whole truth. You are not the pain that was done to you. You are the healing you choose to walk in. At some point in this journey of healing, we all hit a wall, not a physical one, a psychological one. A moment where we stop moving forward because we're waiting for something we don't always admit out loud, an apology. We tell ourselves we're strong, that we've moved on, that we've done the work. But deep down, there's a corner of the soul still holding out for them to come back and say, I'm sorry for what I did. I know I hurt you. You didn't deserve that. And I get it. That kind of acknowledgement would feel like justice, like validation, like closure. But here's the hard truth, you may never get it. Some people will go to their graves denying what they did to you. Others will rewrite the story in their minds until they truly believe you were the problem. And some will just stay silent. Not because they don't know what they did, but because they do. And admitting it would cost them too much ego. So you wait. You wait for them to be accountable. You wait for them to confess. You wait for the conversation that never comes. And in the meantime, your healing is on pause. Not because you're weak, but because you've tied your peace to someone else's honesty. You've made your forward motion dependent on their maturity. And that's a dangerous place to live. Let me ask you something. How much longer are you willing to wait for someone else to do what only you can do for yourself? Because here's what they don't tell you about healing. It's a one-person job. Other people can support you, yes. They can walk with you. But the work of releasing the grip pain has on your identity, that's yours. And the moment you decide to stop waiting for an apology is the moment you stop giving them power over your future. Now, I'm not saying it wouldn't be nice to hear them own up to the damage. But nice and necessary are two different things. What you need is not their apology. What you need is freedom. And freedom doesn't come from their words. It comes from your decision. Your decision to stop rehearsing the betrayal in your mind every time you see their face. Your decision to stop holding conversations in your head where you finally get to say all the things you wish you had. Your decision to say, even if they never admit it, I still get to be whole. That's power. That's agency. That's you taking your life back. See, when you keep waiting for them to apologize, you're actually hoping they'll validate your pain. But you don't need their validation. Your pain is real whether they acknowledge it or not. Your experience is valid even if they act like it wasn't. You don't need their confession to move forward. You need your own permission. And if you're honest, some of us are afraid to stop waiting. Because if we let go of the apology, then what? We can't use their silence as the reason we're still stuck. We can't blame them for why we haven't fully healed. We'd have to look in the mirror and take responsibility for our own restoration. That's uncomfortable, but it's also empowering. Because you're no longer at the mercy of someone else's growth. You're no longer chained to their silence. Letting go of the apology doesn't mean you let them off the hook. It just means you stopped hanging your future on a hook that was never going to hold it. You've got too much purpose to be parked at the scene of your pain, waiting for someone to notice. It's time to give yourself what they never gave you. Closure isn't a conversation, it's a choice. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about freeing. And healing isn't something someone hands you, it's something you choose again and again, even when no one else shows up to witness it. So no, you may never hear the words, I'm sorry. And that's okay, because your wholeness was never dependent on their guilt. It was waiting on your courage. Stop waiting for them to take responsibility and start taking yours. So you've faced the truth. They damaged you, and they did it on purpose. You've owned the pain without letting it define you. You've stopped waiting for the apology that may never come. And now here's the part that feels the most unnatural. You rise anyway, not with revenge in your mouth or bitterness in your bones, but with peace. That's the part people don't understand. Rising without retaliation. We live in a world that teaches us to match energy. If they cut you, you cut back. If they silence you, you shout louder. If they wronged you, you let the whole world know. That's what sounds strong. That's what looks powerful. But let me tell you, real strength is quieter. It's rooted. It's not reaction, it's resurrection. You don't have to avenge what God intends to restore. You don't have to destroy what wounded you to prove you survived it. In fact, your healing is the loudest, clearest answer you'll ever give. Because the one thing people who try to break you never expect is for you to rise whole. Let's be honest, revenge feels good for a moment. It feeds the ego. It gives the illusion of control, but it doesn't heal. It doesn't restore what was lost. If anything, it keeps you tethered to the pain, locked in a cycle where they still have the power to shape your behavior, your energy, your next move. You think you're free, but you're still reacting to them, still orbiting around what they did. Peace, though, peace is unbothered. Peace says, you don't even get that much space in my head anymore. Peace says, you are not the main character in my story. I am. That's the real win. Not just surviving what they did, but thriving in spite of it. Living with such clarity and dignity that they can't even recognize the version of you that emerged from the fire. And I get it. Choosing peace over payback feels unfair. It feels like letting them get away with it. But forgiveness isn't about excusing their behavior. It's about refusing to let it keep renting space in your soul. You forgive not because they deserve it, but because you do. You deserve to live a life that's not shaped by pain, but by purpose. There's a line in the spiritual psychology world that says, you don't heal by chasing justice. You heal by becoming so whole that injustice can't touch your identity anymore. That's what this is about. Rising above what they did to you. Not to prove anything to them, but to prove something to yourself. That you are not what happened. You are who you chose to become after it. And don't get me wrong. Rising doesn't mean pretending. It doesn't mean you minimize the impact. It doesn't mean you walk around smiling while bleeding. Rising means you do the deep, gritty, honest work of healing. You journal until your hand cramps. You cry when it hits you out of nowhere. You get therapy. You set boundaries so sharp they cut through guilt. You do the work, not for appearances, but for peace. The irony is, the people who tried to damage you probably assumed you'd stay stuck. They didn't expect you to love yourself again. They didn't expect you to glow without them. They didn't expect you to find your voice, reclaim your space, and tell your story without shame. But here you are, so no, you don't rise to clap back. You rise to move on. You rise to breathe deeper. You rise to build something better than the pieces they left behind. You rise not as a reaction, but as a rebirth. Because when you become who you were always meant to be in spite of what they tried to take, that is the highest form of resistance. That is your victory. That is your justice. And it's not loud. It's not petty. It's not for show. It's sacred. It's personal. It's yours. Let your healing be the legacy, not what they did, but how you rose.